Hi, everyone. I'm James Garbutt.
And I'm Denny Dumas.
And this is the Garbutt Dumas Real Estate Podcast.
We had high hopes for 2020, Jamie, and I think all hopes are not lost. I think better late than never. This spring market, I think, has just been pushed back a couple months. Last couple weeks have picked up significantly for us and other agents that I've been talking to around Greater Vancouver. So I think it was just a 2-month put on pause. There's still definitely a lot of caution out there, but at the same time, a lot of buyers and sellers are slowly getting back into the swing of real estate.
Absolutely. I think this is the TSN turning point of the market this year, Denny. Not that it really turned, but I feel like May is kind of feeling like March does usually when it starts to warm up, and I imagine June, July, and August are going to be quite busy. I think the big question is, what's the fall going to have in store? Because right now, I get the sense that, well, when I see the clients we're working with, a lot of them are just people that want to move for lifestyle. So it's people that want to upgrade and that aren't living where they want to live, or first-time buyers. And I'm sure there's some pent-up demand there from last year, carryover from last year and earlier this year. I just don't know how big that demand pool is.
Totally.
We will see. We will see.
January, February, early March started so strong. Inventory was really low, and it seemed like anything that was decent was getting multiple offers. And obviously through this COVID crisis, inventory has remained extremely low, and it's still low, but it seems like buyer activity has picked up quite a bit in the last couple of weeks. So I almost think that just carries on moving forward for the next few months. I look at even just some of our experiences in the last couple of weeks, and one last night, like a house in Maple Ridge, we had a young family looking at that got 4 offers after 3 days on market. So I don't know. I think we're back. Remember that market is back video we did, Jamie? I think we're going to re-release that thing.
I think so. We'll relaunch it. Round 2. I totally agree. I think the supply is what's going to hold the market, as particularly for the typical properties that we sell. But there's lots of little mini markets within Vancouver. I can't say for sure that the supply of condos and townhouses deep in the Fraser Valley are remaining low. They might be over, flooded. The supply of luxury homes in the suburbs, they're a little bit flooded right now. So there's definitely some market segments that aren't as thriving and aren't seeing those 4 offers in 3 days. But if you have something that is desirable, SkyTrain line, condo, entry-level house, they're getting a lot of attention these days, and the prices that some of these places are selling at are in line with peak pricing.
Totally.
Not in all cases, but in a lot of cases, yeah. So,
what do agents need to be prepped for the next few months?
Well, I think if you're looking for something, if their clients are looking for something that is rare, maybe it's a house, like a good turnkey house on a street that's say 1.2 million or less. I think you need to prep for multiple offers. I think you need to get your finances in line. I think you need to position yourself for the best chance of getting the place. I mean, you can be, if you're going to try to play the timing game, you can continue to offer with subjects and ignore the world and ignore the frenzies that may happen over the next couple months from the people that are frustrated that haven't bought yet. But you might watch the market climb if you do that. But if you want the best chance of landing something that you like in the next, say, 2 months, I'd make sure your finances are solid and be prepared to do your due diligence prior to offering if you can.
Yeah.
Invest in those inspections, invest in those oil tank scans. What do you think?
I think, well, also from a listing agent point of view, we did that podcast a couple months ago, pre-COVID, how to deal with multiple offers, or at least how we deal with multiple offers. So I think maybe just circling back to that and brushing up your skills on and communication techniques with agents during multiple offers is important. I think making sure that your listing is fully prepped going into the listing. So a lot of good product, I think, in the next few months is going to sell really quickly. So if it's a strata property, making sure that you have strata documents available for buyers as soon as you hit market. If it is a detached property, making sure that you've got oil tank scans and PDSs and floor plans and permits, permit history, all that kind of stuff for buyers to review prior to rating offers. And then at the same time, prepping your seller. If it's a good property that is likely to get multiple offers right now, prep your seller. Make sure that they are in town. The property last night that had 4 offers, the seller was out of town for the weekend and the agent couldn't get a hold of them. So they had 4 offers come in last night.
4 offers.
Yeah, totally. And we're waiting till we're waiting till today or tomorrow until the seller gets back in town to deal with it. So just like getting everything ready to rock prior to listing again. I know a lot of agents through this coronavirus situation that just didn't bother to order strata documents because they didn't think the property was going to sell in 30 days.
It's frustrating. On the selling side, you want to do everything you can to make it easy for the buyer to buy the place. So providing all the information and getting them into the property. And on the buy side, there's nothing more frustrating than losing a property for your buyer because of something that you could have better prepared yourself for. Whether that is pre-inspection or having the deposit ready. I mean, even just if you're going in, say you do get in a multiple offer situation, having a deposit in hand versus not having a deposit in hand is kind of a big deal. And it could be the difference of you getting a place or not getting a place. So just buyer's agent side, it's a different line of frustrations. Just make sure the financing is good, the buyer's aware of all the risks, and pre-set the expectations for inspections and the risk of financing. Maybe there's an appraisal clause to cover themselves, because even if they don't do a financing clause, you want to get that appraiser in there. But on the selling side, you just need to make it easy. You don't want to miss out on that extra offer. You're talking about one example where a seller's out of town. I guess that might be an advantage in this case if they're building up offers over the next few days. But yeah, typically you want the sellers ready for the offers so that you don't frustrate a ready-to-go buyer when that offer comes in.
I think that's one thing that's overlooked is having a deposit attached. And a quick example from a couple of weeks ago, we had a client offer on a townhouse in Port Moody that got, I think, 6 or 8 offers, quite a few. It was priced really, really low. It was an out-of-town listing agent that maybe wasn't super familiar with the complex, but priced really low, got 8 offers or something like that. And our buyer lost, even though they had the highest offer, subject free, $10K above the next offer, because the next offer had a deposit attached. So it's a detail that some agents overlook, but absolutely can be the difference maker if there's a couple of close offers.
Oh, and that's frustrating, and you don't want to, that's a hard conversation you could have as well. I mean, it's an avoidable instance, those cases when they happen. I feel like when it comes to what we're going to see around the corner, we're going to see instances of some listings getting multiple offers and going in frenzies. We're going to see instances of some listings that look pretty good being dead quiet, but just being the wrong product, the right product at the wrong time. And then we're going to see listings where they are, maybe they have a negative, or maybe they're catering towards an investor or builder type client, and those are still struggling. They're still down. So it's going to be interesting times, because there's going to be stories of frustrated sellers mixed with stories of multiple offers and peak pricing. And that's the dynamic of what I think summer 2020 is going to look like.
It sounds like a great podcast topic right there. In these strange times, or coming out of a pandemic, what type of information do we look at? Should agents look at to evaluate properties based on the different type of property?
Well, I mean, there's so many different ways to evaluate a property.
Well, I think we're doing that one next. So let's keep your thoughts.
Yeah, okay, we'll save that. We'll save that, Denny.
Let's briefly touch on. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to mention just the conversations we have, because I think quite often over the last few months, the reason why we're doing another market kind of update podcast is because we're getting asked what's happening out there. And to be honest with you, we just don't know what's around the corner. But what we see right now for condos and entry, say 1.5 or lower houses, and in some cases above that price point in desirable neighborhoods like, say, Queen's Park, New Westminster, what we're seeing right now is more buyers. I'd say more of a seller's market than a buyer's market. And that's due to lack of supply and pretty good demand. But it is still, I'd say, overall, compared to previous markets, demand is probably lower than average, and supply is much lower than average. So it's just, when we look at the last, say, 60 days, there's not a lot of data. It's been a weird time, and the next 60 days are going to tell us the story. But the next 60 days might just be a flood of activity because the last 60 days were so quiet. So the fall is really going to be the determinant. And that's what we're kind of guessing on. I mean, that's what I'm guessing on, is what's going to happen in the fall. If there is a trend.
And I think that's just based on what the inventory level is like for the next 3 months. Mm-hmm. If it remains fairly low and doesn't catch up to demand, I think we have a super busy fall that feels like a spring. Whereas
go ahead.
If there has been a lot of people sitting on the sidelines waiting to list, and it does get flooded and kind of overseeds demand, maybe the fall is where it kind of slows down towards the end of the year.
And I'm going to put my little prediction hat on, Denny, and say it's going to be the previous one. I just don't see supply loosening up. I mean, we're coming off of 2019, which was a slow year. There's only so many sellers that are willing to take a 20% discount on their place from the price they saw before. I think we're really just primarily dealing with people that are moving for lifestyle, and I don't see that flooding the market. And I don't see a lot of projects flooding the market. And even when the projects do, they're at such a high price these days that they're not quite often competing with resale market in a lot of, say, Burnaby condos, for example. The price points of new construction is a little bit higher, but I would like to see that come down. So I guess one thing that I'd like to kind of put out there is, the more common products that we sell, I think that the supply is going to be tight and prices are going to hold, if I were to guess, for the fall. The luxury out of the sweet spot price points, the north of 2 million homes, I think they're going to still struggle. I just don't think there's enough of a demand for the supply that we have. And for the pre-sale condos, the new construction, I feel they've lost the investors. I feel that, well, not all the investors, but a lot of them. And how many end users are going to buy a couple of years in advance for, 20% above the comparable units on the resale market? And I feel there will be some, but I don't get the sense that there's going to be those lineups for presentation centers that there were before. I'm going to say that there won't be lineups in a lot of markets, suburb markets, but maybe, if Mount Pleasant launched a project, it might be lined up around the corner. I mean, your guess is as good as mine. Every market does something different. And when I look at New Westminster, it's not like there are a lot of projects that are being launched soon. So there are genuinely some cities, some neighborhoods that just have a lack of new construction coming down the pipe. And even with me being pessimistic about new construction condos, in theory, they could be lined up around the door just due to lack of supply.
Totally.
But I mean, what are your thoughts on the dynamic of pre-sales moving forward? Because we're coming off of 700,000 plus one bedrooms in Brentwood Park. Do you think that's going to exist again? Like exist in 2020?
Yeah, well, it was interesting to see that dynamic of new construction kind of change or shift in late 2019. And for the first time in years that I can remember, probably since 2015, we were seeing developers offer incentives and discounts to try to sell the rest of their project. So yeah, I new construction's an interesting one. Obviously, Pure West was a good example within New West that came out at the right time, sold well above any other project that has ever hit in that market at over $1,000 a foot in early 2018. And that just wouldn't be even close if it came back today.
No,
I mean,
no.
a lot of investor clients liked that one just because it was such a unique project, and I think Bose sold it really well. But at the same time, it was like a 5 or 6 year project that people were just speculating. And based on what's happened in the last couple of years in Greater Vancouver real estate, I wonder if people are just a little more cautious about the speculation.
I would think so. I think so.
Yeah.
I also think that a lot of investors might see other opportunities in other,
Yes.
investments right now. With stocks being hit, you could gamble on real estate, or you could gamble on, say, the stock market. And regarding that Pure West Bosa development, those prices were high. I mean, it is going to be by far the nicest development in New West. The buyers might be saved by the fact that there's going to be such a long construction process, and by the time it completes, we might be in a much better market. I also feel that Bosa is probably going way over budget on their construction based on the slow progress that I'm seeing down on the waterfront there. So it is an expensive build, but I don't think that could be repeated, Denny. I really don't. I think if I were to put my hat on of what would make sense as a new construction project from, a buyer's angle, I would think that if the project was priced reasonably in line with the resale pricing, because I felt like for a while there, the frenzies just got out of control and developers were able to get such a lift above what those units would have gone for in resale if they existed. But I feel like if they get closer to resale, like they did in softer markets, and the deposit structure is reasonable, maybe even 10%. Sometimes you can get less. Then that makes sense. You're not paying a mortgage payment for 2, 3, 4 years in some cases. You put 10% down. You're paying in line with resale pricing. That makes sense as a gamble, as a potential investment. The only caution I'd say is reputation for developers seems to be more and more important these days. Sometimes when a development does too well, you lose out because the developer flips the property and doesn't proceed with it, or there's been cases where they ask for more money or just release you. And sometimes if the project doesn't do very well and the market turns the other way, you get caught, or the project doesn't happen either, for different reasons. So, I'd say in this day and age, one thing to be a little more careful of, if you're buying a project in the next, say, 12 months, when the prices might be more reasonable and it completes in 4 years, when the prices go, potentially through the roof. There have been instances where some developers see that gain, and before they break ground, they flip they flip the land over, and you lose that lift, and that is devastating if you're a buyer. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of touch on that because we've seen it, and it seems criminal.
Let's end with obviously lots of real estate practices have changed in the last couple of months. Let's end with what we predict adjusts, maybe back to the way it was, or potentially proceeds as we've done in the last couple of months. But strictly open houses, I think those waivers that are floating around that people don't really understand and are signing, like last night we had a buyer seeing a property in the next couple of days have to sign 3 different documents, which is just ridiculous. I think those disappear in a month or two, at least get fewer and fewer. Open houses, do you think we see those back this summer?
If I'm going to just put a wild guess on it, I'd say, I'm going to say yes. And I'm going to say by August. And this is a random guess, and I have no logic for it other than the fact that, I did look up the coronavirus stats for BC yesterday and the day to day, and it's, the daily infected cases are down quite a bit, and it's in Fraser Valley. So if that gets to 0 for a period of time, I could see open houses coming back in. Mainly, but I think they'll be a little bit different. I don't think they'll be, 50 shoes at the front door in a packed house. I think they'll be managed different, but it's a great way to orchestrate a lot of buyers in a space in a limited window of time. So I'd hope they'd come back in maybe a different version of what they were before.
Like, do you think there's maybe, the velvet red rope at the front door and you only allow 2 groups in at a time, or kind of thing?
Yeah, something like that. Maybe a little more than 2 groups, but Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be maybe, maybe it makes sense to do that 2 to 4 window. You might not feasibly able to get the traffic through. So maybe the open houses windows have to be off peak time or wider, like a 1 to 4 or a 1 to 5. Honestly, Denny, I don't know, but it is, we both know it's an effective tool to, when you have a new desirable listing, to get a lot of people in the door. And I'd like to think that the board recognizes that advertising an open house to encourage people to come through is helpful, to get those extra buyers through. But also, I think by the time August rolls around, and this is just a random guess, I think it's going to feel more normal to be in a home with other people. And I just think that the rules will be softened by then, because we'll have been going into stores with other people, by then, I would think. But maybe I'm an optimist.
Even just looking at like the amount of phone calls we've received in the last week and a half, I'd say, compared to April, I think the reality is that a lot of people are starting to feel more comfortable with going into other people's homes. There was definitely that level of concern in late March, early April, but I think people are just kind of getting used to, or at least getting comfortable with, the idea of things going back to somewhat normal.
Yeah, I agree with that. It feels more normal out there. How do you feel about the forms? When do you think the forms are going to disappear? Or do you?
you know my honest thoughts, Jamie. I think they're ridiculous. I don't really understand why people are using them, nor do I think 85% of realtors that are using them or asking people to sign them have even read them. I hope they go away quickly. It's just a hassle. Some of them are decently written. Others are ridiculous. I think by, what is it now? May 19th. I think by the end of June, we see less than half of what is out there right now.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, Denny, so I think we should leave it at that, man.
Right. Things are changing weekly. We'll probably do another one in the next couple of weeks because everything keeps changing. But I think that's pretty good. I think we're in for a really busy summer. And I think that was the point of today, is just kind of agents out there. Let's get ready to rock. Buyers and sellers are coming out of their caves of the last couple of months. And I think it's going to be a very, very active summer.
Yeah, this might be the busiest August, September, October that we've experienced. And I think we'll probably have to do another one of these updates in July or August, because we're going to have a much, much better idea where the market's going by then.
Totally.
All right. Well, Denny, let's call it.